So year sevens, we've been doing lots of work about the Gothic style of writing, and we're continuing with that work. So our next lesson is about narrative devices, and our learning objective today to use a range of narrative devices to involve the reader and to recognise how readers convey setting, character and mood through word choices and sentence structure. Our starter activity, as you can see right now, it says each of the following sentences are simple sentences. How could you vary the sentences to make them more interesting to read? So let's have a read through those sentences with the blue background. There was moonlight. The curtains were open. I saw a woman. She was lying still on the bed in a white robe. A demon was sitting on her. I was scared. So that's okay, but it's not great. It doesn't make it sound very tense or very creepy. What I'd like you to have a go at doing is rewriting these lines to make them exciting and full of tension. Try and really build up that tension. Think about changing the word choices, so thinking about a wider range of vocabulary, changing or varying your sentence types, and adding some interesting sentence openers. So we're now going to read through an extract called Hideous Dogs. This is written by Anthony Horowitz, who wrote the piece of writing, the story that we read on World Book Day. And this is taken from a book called Ravensgate. And it tells us Matt is being chased by some ghastly dogs. The writer's trying to create excitement and tension. So this is Hideous Dogs. The first of the creatures had already halved the distance between itself and Matt, yet it didn't seem to be moving fast. It hovered in the air between each bound, barely touching the grass before jumping up again. There was something hideous about the way it ran. A panther or leopard closing in for the kill has a certain majesty, but the dog was deformed, lopsided, ghastly. The flesh on one of its flanks had rotted and a glistening ribcage jutted out. As if to avoid the stench of the wound, the animal had turned away, its head hanging close to its front paws. Strings of saliva trailed from its mouth, and every time its feet hit the ground, its whole body quivered, threatening to collapse in on itself. Matt reached the fence and clawed at it with his hands, crashing his fingers against the wire. He thought he had run in a straight line, following the way he had come, but he seemed to have got it wrong. He couldn't find the gap. He looked behind him. 2 more bounds and the dogs would reach him. There was no doubt that they would tear him apart. He could almost feel their teeth tearing into him, ripping the flesh away from his bones. He had never seen anything so ferocious. Not in a zoo, not in a film, not anywhere in the real world. So, if we look at the activity underneath that extract, it says Anthony Horowitz uses a number of techniques to create excitement and tension. Copy and complete this table, then explain at least 2 other ways he does this. So we've got using vivid, unusual words that feed our imaginations. We've got the example of ghastly, and as it tells us there, it sounds a bit like ghostly, so it's frightening straight away. Also, ghastly sounds unhealthy and rather disgusting. Other features that we've got, repeating words and phrases to build up a fast rhythm and using short sentences for impact. So what I'd like you to do is copy and complete that table, filling in examples of where we've got repeated words and phrases and how that works in the extract, and then using short sentences for impact, an example of that and how that works in the extract. Give yourself about 5 minutes on that. Off you go. Okay, so next up, we're going to read an extract from near the end of the Hideous Dogs chapter of Ravensgate. So there's a little bit of a gap, but it's carrying on from what happens after Matt's been chased by the dogs. And then it says, read the 3 possible endings for the chapter. One of them is the ending that Anthony Horowitz actually used. Which version makes the best cliffhanger and why? So this is the extract from near the end of Hideous Dogs, and then we'll look at the 3 possible endings. Matt felt a thump as they drove over the body of one of the dying creatures. But where was the other? He looked around, then yelled out as, still blazing, it slammed into the windscreen, launching itself out of nowhere. For a few seconds, it was in front of him, its dreadful teeth centimetres from his face. Then Richard changed into first gear and wrenched the wheel. The dog spun away. Matt looked out of the back window. The flickering remains of one carcass lay in the middle of the road. The second had got snarled up in the wheels, but as the car sped forward, it fell free and was tossed to one side. So the first of 3 possible endings. They accelerated away, not looking back again. They got home by midnight, and at last they felt safe. Our second possible ending. Richard pulled a face and opened the window. "So do you mind telling me what that was all about?" he demanded. Matt didn't know where to begin. "I think something is happening in Lesser Malling," he said. Richard nodded. "I think you could be right." And our third possible ending. "Take that!" Richard yelled as he accelerated off the track and onto the Fern Road. The car swerved a couple of times before settling down and hurtling into darkness. They didn't speak all the way home. When they got there, they parked carefully on the drive and went to bed. So let's go back to that question then. We've read those 3 possible endings. Which of them is the ending do you think that Anthony Horowitz actually used? And which version makes the best cliffhanger and why? I'd like you to have a go at doing that. And then your final activity on this piece of writing is to write another ending. What could possibly happen? So you've got the dogs, one of them's dead on the ground, the other one has just hurled itself at the car that Richard is driving and Matt is in, and then they've hit it, and then it still seems to be alive. It's got caught up in the wheels. What might happen next? Let's see if you can write an even better ending than Anthony Horowitz did. Okay, off you go.